Now, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for being here and welcome to the Children and Youth Education and Youth Committee of the Georgia State Senate. First thing I'd like to do is call on Senator Anna Vittori if you'll lead us in a word of prayer.
Bow our heads. Dear gracious Lord, just thank you for bringing us here today, this afternoon, focus and talk about the children in our state. Just want to pray over everyone who's in this room that cares about our kids, fighting for our kids, that we lift your name up in grace and everything be done as your will would be done. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, sir. Just welcoming everybody, I'd just like to introduce myself a little bit as far as this is a new role for me as the chairman of this committee, and just to give you a little background on, I was not a formal educator, but I was an educator nonetheless for 30 years. I worked at the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice as a state juvenile probation officer, and those kids taught me as much as I ever taught them, I can assure you of that. But I'd like to say that a term that we used when I started back 30 years ago with what was the Department of Children and Youth Services, and that term was, what's in the best interest of the child? What's in the best interest of the child? And that was a guiding force for me for whatever kid was in front of me for all those years. And even to the point when they were lashing out at me, it still gave me the sense to still consider what's in the best interest of this child, even though they were literally spitting in my face. And that's what gave me the power and the ability just to literally wipe it off and keep teaching and showing them the better way and turning lives and changing young lives. So I look forward to the work we can do on this committee. And so I'll just ask of the committee that we keep our focus there, not on us, not on the players, but literally considering every child, K through 12 in Georgia, in every community, in every county, urban and rural, what is in the best interest of kids in Georgia, the students in Georgia, how can we best serve those, because that's who we need to serve. So I'll just open with that, and thank you for being here. And today we have a guest. We've invited Richard Woods to join us. And Mr. Woods, if you'd like to come forward. Yes, sir.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Could we vote on the rules of the committee first?
Oh, yes. So moved. You have in your folder, each of you, the rules. The only thing that's been changed from the rules from previous biennial was we've added additional members to this committee, so therefore the quorum has changed from 5 to 6 members required for a quorum. And then also on number 13, I had added the language in the parentheses, except for those matters deemed as a hearing only by the chairperson. And that's because there will probably be situations where we will just have hearings on issues and we won't be taking a vote on those issues. So those are the rules. If anybody have any questions or discussion, do I have a motion? I have a motion to pass and second. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, so passes. Now, Mr. Woods, if you can come forward. It's an honor to have you here, and thank you for taking the time.
Where you would like me to be at?
Would it be better if I move?
Well,
We could speak at the podium.
the podium would be fine.
Okay.
Do we have a microphone?
Make sure that we have the slide clicker up here.
But thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I know right now with this year, everybody's schedule is going crazy, but I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you for being here and give us an update. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you again. It's a pleasure to be with you, and congratulations, Mr. Chairman. And for those that are new to the committee, welcome. To those who have seen you over the past few years, again, it's good to see you back in your current roles. Again, I do want to thank you all for what you've done for public education over the past few years. We've seen a lot of great advances throughout the state, and a lot of that has been done because of your continued partnership with us at the DOE. The QBE funding and then prioritizing that has been well received throughout the state. Record high graduation rates, as we continue to move forward, beating the other states, academically. So, we're seeing good things and good trends in Georgia. Unfortunately, we have something called COVID-19 that has somewhat interrupted, education, but it's interrupted all of our lives as we move forward. Let's see. What you'll see up on the screen is that we do have, some things to give you a little idea of what reopening has looked like across the state of Georgia. You'll see the map on the left was really prior to Christmas. The map on the right is what we have that is currently, where we are. And again, there may be some changes with that. But largely with the blue, as you look up there, you'll find that those were the cases or school districts in which we had roughly a 5-day experience, and we had options, whether that was face-to-face or was it, a virtual option. So by and large across the state, we were having school, in some type of face-to-face setting. Of course, that did kind of alter a little bit, depending where you were at, and again, due to some of the quarantine things that were perhaps thrown our way. As you look at the green
districts were hybrid, which you probably had more of an A-B type setting, in which half of the kids came to school 2 days out of the week. The rest of the kids came the other couple of days of the week, and then you had probably Friday typically has been a virtual day. And then the last kind of peach color, these districts, started the year and really remained through this first semester. They were, completely virtual throughout the state. Again, the first map, again, as I said, kind of shows prior to the Christmas break that we experienced in districts in purple. On the second map, again, what we looked at, you'll see up there, they delayed, their setting. Right now, most, if not all, of our districts are looking at coming back to some type of face-to-face, school setting. But again, that is really determined upon outbreaks. We did have a spike, as you know, across the state, and we've had to adjust to that. That is working with, our local health department or regional health departments with that, and under the guidance of DPH and even probably with the CDC as well. But for the most part, we are looking at going back. As I've experienced across the state, I have had the privilege of actually visiting about 49 schools since August. And during that time, what I've found and probably have seen is that at that time, we were about 70% face-to-face with the districts that had that option. And again, that could vary a little bit as we go across the state. In some districts, it has been as high as 90% face-to-face instruction. And then, of course, as I said, we have had a few districts that have yet to actually offer that or been face-to-face together. But overall, like I said, we're having a lot of success in school. I know Dr. Hines will be probably sharing with you in a little bit. We've had a great year as far as looking at being able to complete that. Girls softball, girls volleyball, boys and girls cross country, and finishing up with football. So a lot of the extracurricular activities, which are very essential to a child and their education, their opportunities, have been going on as well. But that's because we've been following the mitigations, the protocols that have been set. And so with that being said, we're looking pretty good thus far on that. There we go. As we look at, our theme this year has really been, compassion over compliance and meeting the challenges of this. As we began the school year, first and foremost, and I want to say that our districts have done a great job. It was really concerning the safety of each child, each teacher, each parent, each staff and support person that entered our schools. Typically, as I traveled throughout, I would dare say that if I've been in the school, I have had my temperature taken in every school that I've gone into. The protocols, and again, for many of the schools I visited, for anyone that has entered a school,
that you look at temperature checks. You're looking at things that our schools have done to be very effective with that. First of all, is getting, the PPE delivered. And I appreciate Gina and the governor's office working with that. We looked at, providing masks for every student and teacher and educator that was there. We're looking at foggers, disinfectant. And again, that goes from the classroom to the buses, the cafeteria, everywhere in between. And, life looks a lot different when you go into schools. Touchless water fountains, is something that, we're seeing across the board. How traffic is maintained moving students from place to place. Sometimes definitely in the early grades, what you'll find out is that students typically are self-contained. When they go out to play or go out to the lunchroom, these students within these classes stay together. So it's not a lot of intermingling. High school is a little bit different just because of the nature of the class and scheduling that we deal with. We've probably seen a little bit of an issue as we've moved through there. But by and large, as I said, we've done a great job across the board. And I really want to thank, the partnership that really has started with Dr. Toomey, the governor, GEMA, and all other state agencies. This has really been a team effort as we looked at this. A lot of our schools delayed their startup dates. Typically, we begin about the first week in August. Many schools waited until after September. And that was to help prepare their staff to meet and make sure everything was in place so that we could start school for those that wanted that option safely, but also to prepare our teachers for online, instruction. Because to be honest, that was something we did not go to school and did not have that preparation. Yes, some people did do online learning and instruction, but to say when March came and we got the word that we are stopping this, that became something that was very new. And overnight we had to flip that switch. Now, for some of us, what we did learn about is that what does connectivity look like across the state, and that continues to be an issue, and I think an ongoing issue we continue to look at. There are ways in which a lot of our districts also continue on instruction with paper pencil. So it was a lot of different modalities in trying to do that, and so we continue to make those shifts and adjustments as we move forward. Again, looking at that, we talk about connectivity at the very beginning. It was estimated that 80,000 student households across the state did not have access to wireline internet service. And this has been an ongoing discussion for many years, but I'm glad to see that we can continue to move on and have improved that. To close the gap, we did partner with the governor's office and private funds. Sure.
If we have a particular area of concern that we know about in our district, near a high school, is that something you can help me with?
Yes, we can. Like I said, because there are a couple of different ways we've looked at that. Like I said, we have looked at putting extenders on school buildings.
Yep.
So again, that gives us more of a local area. Again, with some of the hotspot or the Wi-Fi rangers, and then typically putting them on a bus or some type of vehicle and parking it at a location, that would be something we could definitely look into, and just make sure that the district you're interested in, has that or has not, if they have something that need to be deployed, we can do that as well.
Thank you. I'll get with Cardozo on
Sure,
that.
okay.
Follow
And
up.
again, we have worked with other people such as, behind the screen. Some of our families do continue to struggle. Some of our kids that, have been put in a situation where they've had to choose, to perhaps be engaged in school or to work full time to help support their families during this area. So those are issues that we, want to make sure that we continue to address. We were still in charge or commissioned to feed our kids even though we were not in school. So we have worked with local, faith-based organizations. Our schools we have probably became the largest delivery service of food, throughout the state. To this date, we have served over 111 million meals throughout the state, and we continue to do that. I appreciate, again, former Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue and the work that they gave us a lot of waivers so that we were able to do the things that we would do and feed, these young people and their families. In many cases, what you'll find out even today is that those that are learning virtually, they can come pick up, food for that week or for the day, depending on the situation. And so we continue to meet that need. We've issued guidance on student and staff mental health and wellness, and working to decrease and focus on assessments and accountability. One of the things we looked at is trying to reduce our mandated testing across the board. I think that was one of the things that I felt very strong about, that we needed to give our teachers a full year of instruction, not focusing on the test, not focusing on the high stakes test, but let's give us a full year, because we have been out for a while. And again, what you find out is that the learning models are different. You've had some kids who come to school, but because of quarantine guidance, they're out for 14 days or now 10 days, and then they come back, and then next thing you know, they're out again. So we're having to make those adjustments. We know that the learning loss and our learning challenges, are not limited to this school year. We're having to look beyond, we're having to look in summer, we're having to look to the future to make sure that we're going to be adequately preparing and meeting the needs of our young people, even at this day. And I did instruct my staff as early as October to say, let's begin to think about the summer. Let's begin to think about ways in which we needed to serve and reach out to our kids. I think one of the things we have looked at is making sure that we fully fund and support our school nurses, our mental health workers as well. And that's not only for our students, but our teachers are just as important as well. They suffer from this just like anyone else. They have the issues that they've had to deal with. And many of our teachers, when you look at what they've had to undergo, is that if you are teaching face-to-face and you are teaching also virtual, you have doubled your prep time. You've doubled the engagement you look at, and many of our teachers, of course, are looking at that they are spending, 50, 60, perhaps even 70 hours a week to meet the needs of their young people. And that's in addition to meeting the needs of their families at home as well. And again, speaking on, looking to the future and looking at learning loss, I think this is something that many people have asked, and I know that we have looked at. But as I've shared, I've visited, roughly 49 schools, if not more, since August. And as I've looked at that, I want to assure you that our school districts, they are monitoring what's going on with their kids. They are assessing their children. I've seen data boards, I've seen the testing, implementation that they have across the state to make sure that they are meeting the needs of their children. Virtual is still a little bit of an issue as far as trying to make that happen, because a lot of times that with the programs or things they're using, they're having, you would have to be in school for face-to-face. For us in the state of Georgia, I'm glad to say that at the beginning of the year, we have a new tool called Beacon. Beacon is a formative assessment for math, English language arts, and reading that is provided by our milestones provider, DRC. But with Beacon, it is aligned to our milestones in those subject areas for grades 3 through 8. So this is an online formative assessment in which that is free to every single district across the state. That is no charge to them. So again, we tried to take the financial burden out of the hands of our local districts to give them something that will support, our instruction as we continue to move forward. And this is also with the Beacon, you can use this online. We have our G-Kids that we're doing some things with that. Again, a lot of that, unfortunately, still continues to be, face-to-face instruction, but we continue to do that. We have Keenville, which we've extended. That is for grades 1 and 2 primarily, and looking at math and English language arts and reading. And that is also something that can be provided for students that are at home or virtual learning. So, we've made strides with that. We have a platform that's out there, but I did want just to reassure people across the state that, our districts are assessing their kids day in and day out, just to make sure that that we can reduce the amount of learning loss that we potentially have to deal with. And we talk about learning loss, and that really comes in two areas. It's not just for those kids that need remediation to be brought up, but we need to make sure that we are not holding back any single student. If they're ready to move on, then we need to be able to accelerate where they are at as well. And that's an important component of what we're doing in education. As you look at the district plans and they move forward, you'll see that many of them are already looking at what they can do to provide, instruction. That perhaps may be meaning augmenting the instructional day. It could be prioritizing some of the instructional content to what these students, truly will need to be successful as they continue on. For us at the DOE, we look at some things that, with potential CARES 3 funding. One of the things that we look at, and have been talking with the governor's office, we will have plans and we will use some of our current resources jointly to help, put a wall or a barrier against potential learning loss as we continue to move forward. But especially with the CARES 3 funding, that will be a commitment that we will lay out to our districts to make sure that they are fully supported as they can. We've received a lot of money from Washington, D.C. with CARES 2. A lot of our districts in the Title I area will have a lot of funding to support that. In fact, they will receive, I think it's 4 times the amount of funding that they received with our CARES 1 allocation. As you look at, how we are, continuing to address that, again, as I mentioned, we've trained our teachers, 15,000 teachers as we move forward. We've partnered with entities such as GPB to provide, learning packets. Our website, again, continues to promote things, and we continue to support not only our teachers and educators, our students, but also looking at how we can support our parents as well. The reality was that our parents in many cases became teachers overnight with that instruction. So, it has been a complete program in which we have continued to reach out and continue to see how we can support our young people and our teachers and parents in the days ahead. Again, we're also looking at working to create a grant opportunity for school districts specific to addressing learning loss. As I mentioned, allowing them to expand the school year or school day, provide summer programs, working with probably nonprofit groups to expand opportunities as well. Again, a lot of groups that we can traditionally have done so in the past, we will look to enhance that. Districts receiving the grant will need to target specific students for services, provide details on how they're identifying those students. And finally, our school improvement team will continue to work with our lowest performing schools to help them address that. Again, Dr. Johnson, continues to work very hard with our districts to make sure that everyone is being served. Not like I said, your address and zip code should not be a barrier to education. As we look at this, and again, we look at closing down, we continue to look toward the future. The education advancement of our kids cannot be denied. We must continue to think about where we're going and what we're going to look at to improve education. As you look at this is our reimagining document and our legislative priorities. I think we have the one document is in your hands. The reimagining document I think we have sent out prior to, but it is left on our website. Thinking about things such as expanding our graduation opportunities, improving our evaluation system, supporting our teachers in the days ahead. A whole host of things that are very important to the advancement so that we can continue. I firmly believe that one day and very soon we will see a 90% graduation rate in the state of Georgia, which will be a great advancement. Our kids will continue to not only graduate with a diploma, but it will be with credentials that lead them into the workforce and into higher education or the military. So those are things that we have to make sure that we are supporting opportunities for our children throughout the state, and something that we are dedicated on. The children are what we are about. It is solely that the primary focus for myself since coming into office, and what can we do to prepare them for life. And unfortunately right now life is dealing with COVID-19. But I think that looking at perhaps giving them a personal finance course, giving them that support that will allow them to be very, very successful and navigate for whatever life throws at them as they graduate and leave us and move on to higher ed. I do believe that we will continue along the current course for the rest of the school year as we look at things. But our schools, as I shared, have been doing a good job following the mitigations that are there. And because of that, we have been successful. We are having school. And at the end of the day, I think with some of the things we have looked at, we will continue that. One of the things I appreciate the governor, he's been a great partner when looking at public education. He is, in my opinion, as I've shared with others, he's probably been, if not, in my opinion, the most supportive governor we have had when it comes to public education. I appreciate, especially with the state of the state, where both he and I and our offices work together, and we'll be working together to provide our teachers, our support staff, bus drivers, custodians, special ed individuals, a whole host of about 284,000 people that are associated with our education family, that we'll give them $1,000 to help support that and their efforts, and hopefully keep them in education, into our public school family for years to come. Because as I traveled out, many of our teachers, many of our individuals have self-sacrificed using their own money, using their own funding to make sure that they and their kids are safe and that they are following everything they need to do to make sure we have a successful year. We've started the school year, we've made it halfway through, and I expect us to finish strong. So again, Mr. Chairman, that is kind of an update, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions at this time if anyone so has. If not, then I will be glad to step away from the podium.
Thank you, sir. And I do have a couple of questions. Chairman Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Woods, I really appreciate you taking time to be here. You talked about the graduation rate, and you want to go toward a
90%. I think we can get 90%, yes.
What's the current graduation rate at this time?
We're roughly about 84.4, I think, at that. And since taking office, we have been able to expand that. And I think with the expected pathway expansion, moving away from the one-size-fits-all that we're looking at, that will, again, continue to make education relevant. And supporting our dual enrollment program, we're seeing some great growth. So that's a very doable and reachable.
A follow-up question, Dr. Wood?
Sure.
The graduation rate is approximately 84%.
Yes.
Is that graduate based on the students that enter 12th grade that graduate, or in the 9th grade that graduate?
It's our 9th grade. It's our four-year cohort that begins with that.
And 84% of the students that enter 9th grade graduate in 4 years?
On 4 years on time, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And that's grown to, I think when I started, I think we were about 69%.
Yes, sir.
So,
That's a tremendous difference.
okay.
Senator Anavatori.
How are you, Dr. Woods? Thanks for being here. One of the questions I have goes to what you talked about around learning loss and the assessments that have been done. When are you all going to have trend lines that you can provide us in terms of what is the level of learning loss going back to the previous school year, maybe February, March, when COVID hit the state? Because I know one of the concerns I've even had in my own family, is just around what are school districts doing in terms of mitigation strategies, which I know they're implementing them, but what is the true level of learning loss that we're seeing in our local communities? And instead of waiting till this summer or the end of the year and we get a full data set, and then we, another 12 months, kids are losing out. What are some proactive things that we can be doing, or when would you have data that we can look at and have that conversation?
Well, I think that as we go, right now we are on target as far as testing in the state of Georgia. We do not have permission from USAID to mitigate that, so we were looking at the milestones 3 through 8, that it is, we're on course to give that test. That would provide some. I think that as we get information from districts, again, that may be district by district. For those that are using the beacon, there may be some ways in which we can aggregate some information from that. Depending on what district you're talking about, they may use something such as STAR, iStation, or some various program that they've been using for years. So, I think that, we perhaps, again, I don't want to speak out of turn with that, but I think with speaking with Dr. Allison Timberlake on our assessment protocols of how we're going to use that information. The full extent, will kind of vary. I think one of the telling things we look at is graduation rate. I mean, we'll be able to know in the days ahead what that looks like and the impact that it's having. For us, I think the Beacon is probably our strongest tool that we have, just because it is aligned with the milestones, and so that gives us, a good picture. Thinking about the future, it would probably take a year to get some accurate data. Next year, again, we should be back online. Again, if everything goes, again, I'm just speaking, based on the information I have today. So within a year we could, I'll try to get back with you on some projected information that we could, pull back.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more data sources you have, because I know graduation rate's one data point, but my concern is, and I've seen it in our school district where, kids are just getting kicked up to the next grade. I get it, but just making sure that we're equipping them with everything humanly possible early on. And, I know this is a very complex issue and we're not going to solve it all overnight, but I just feel like, what are some things that we can start thinking about and doing, especially, as legislators, making sure that we're equipping our school districts and communities with the resources they need to be successful.
Well, again, I go back to the point of being able to grab or travel around. I can tell you there are data boards out there. The school districts are collecting data on individuals. We have not given up on the school year. We've not given up on our kids. To anyone, I would say if you're thinking about just passing someone up, don't do that. You will cause more harm for any child that's there. I think we have to look at being flexible next year. I think evaluating our kids where they're at and moving them forward. And again, as I said, the effects of this pandemic will not stop at the end of the school year. We've got to be thinking what that looks like. And I think having those resources, again, formative tools that help them have that evaluation. We got the whole summer. And one of the things I found out within some school districts that they've looked at, if you were a virtual learner this year or the first half, if you are not where you need to be, they are requiring, and again, in many cases requiring those kids come back for the second semester to make sure that they're learning and so that they can see that. Because obviously something was going on virtual that it just did not work for them. And not every student, is there. I would say, fortunately for us, again, I go back, on average, when you see that map, most of Georgia, when we talk about our districts, we have a face-to-face option, and roughly about at least 70% of our kids have been face-to-face. And I think that as I did travel around, many of our parents, once they found out that the wheels were not falling off, they began to send their kids back to school. So we'll try to get that information again for you. Okay.
And I had a question as far as the assessment and accountability. Are we taking strides to make sure, as far as there's been a lot of stress over the last year, and I'm sure that falls upon those kids too. So as far as mental health capacity and make sure the kids are getting access to counseling?
Very much so. I think that's one thing we've looked at. We've been working with the governor's office. I know y'all have, the past year or so we had Apex, which we expanded at. We looked at that, probably looking at expanding those opportunities across the state and working with our counselors. Mental health, again, we look at one thing, and I would say that at least we've been in the forefront. It's not something where all of a sudden we woke up today and we had to do this. We've had a whole child approach at the DOE. We've been working, with our districts, working with, public and private partners to help provide those resources. Telehealth maybe is something that may be, an option as we continue to move forward. With that, I think we have to look at some of the, HIPAA rules and things that, with that and figuring out what that contention looks like. But as I shared, it's not just for our students, but also our teachers as well. There was, again, to be honest, there was a lot of stress, a lot of apprehension when we first started school. And I think that was one thing that I tried to share is that let's don't necessarily worry about the academic part, but let's ease the anxiety. Let's reduce that stress so that we can learn. Because I guarantee you, if our teachers are stressed, that transfers directly into the classroom and those kids. They know what's going on. And so we'll continue to work with that, work with our support individuals, and expand those opportunities. Again, one of the things we face is that there's just not enough of X to be there in, face to face. And so we'll continue to prioritize and work with our districts as well.
Is there any support for teachers or educators that might need, help
Yes,
with
sir.
dealing with all the stresses?
Yeah. Well, I think they're using our counselors as best we can. I think that continues to be a way in which we look at that and work with our school districts. In some districts, there are some telehealth, opportunities for those. I think looking at our resources, we talk about, learning loss, then how do we prepare and, work with our educational staff to ensure that. We continue to get data from, our districts to see what are the needs. And by listening to them, we can find out what that looks like. In some districts, yes, they've been better suited to serve. But in some districts, we definitely need to, kind of pick up the pace and see what we can do. But hopefully, our additional funding and prioritizing funding will help.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Superintendent, for being here. It's good to see you. I'm trying to get clarity around today.
Okay.
Exactly how many districts are not allowing a 5-day-a-week in-class option, and how many students that's impacting across the state of Georgia. Do you have a firm number on that, or even a more?
A ballpark?
Sure, yeah.
I would say Mr. Cardoza, I think he's been kind of keeping the ball on that. So do you have anything?
Sure. It would be hard to give you a very specific number right now. I can probably get you one by the end of the day. We do keep up with those numbers based on, y'all might be familiar with the SOLVE scholarship that the governor and Department of Early Care and Learning do. So part of it is, are you 50% or more face-to-face? And if you are, or you are not, you may qualify. But so if you're looking for very specifically how many are 100% face-to-face, is that correct?
I'd like to know that. I would also like to, if you're going to dig up the data, I'd also like to know for those that are virtual, how many of them are not offering, or how many of them are not offering a 5-day-a-week instruction time? Because
Even virtually. Okay.
I've heard about some schools that are only offering 3 days a week of instruction, and they're all virtual. The Brookings Institute estimates that when we started the fall, students had lost 30% of what they learned the previous year in reading and 50% of what they had heard in math, and that was for the fall. So for those that will go a whole year without in-person instruction, I'm very concerned about that. I do have a follow-up question on that, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. And thinking about the 30% of districts that are not meeting in person, and thinking about the special needs students in those districts, what options or what programs are being offered to parents and specifically to those students who, obviously it's a challenge to have any kids at home, but for those that have special needs, what are we offering to them if they're not able to meet in person?
Well, I think that, for us, we're still obligated to meet the IDA and their EIPs. With those districts, it may look, again, when you're talking special needs, that's a whole wide spectrum of what is needed or required for services. For myself, I think, just looking at what I've seen across the state, there has been a large number of which individuals have been brought in. There have been some cases, I think, where districts have actually sent people out to the homes to serve. And so I think when you look at that, again, to find numbers, we probably have to work to see if we could pull that up. But we are required to meet their IEPs and our districts. And again, I've not necessarily heard a lot of contradictory information on that. With some districts that have been completely virtual, again, I would have to fall on that. But again, most of the schools as I go out, we've had a face-to-face option throughout. And I think as you saw with the map, largely as far as looking at district-wide. Now, there have been a few of our metro areas that have been completely virtual, and we'll have to look and see what that information looks like.
Thank you. I'm sure you saw. It's okay. Chairman, I'm sure you saw in the news this morning, Las Vegas returned at-risk students to school in their district because they have an increased number of suicides. And I think anecdotal. Well, we all know somebody who suffered from that in this body. And I'm sure you also saw the CDC's guidance 2 days ago saying basically kids should be back in school with precautions. What is your department doing to make sure that these districts are not meeting in person, know about the newest CDC guidance, which proves what the data has kind of been telling us for a while now, which is that we should get kids back in classrooms?
Well, one of the things, of course, I know Mr. Cardoza, actually, we send that guidance out on a regular basis as we receive updates. So all the districts are well informed of any changes that have been made. I know originally it was 14 days for quarantine, and now down to 10. So anytime there is a shift or a change in that, we provide the information across the board. our job is to make sure that we support our local districts. And as I said, I think, we're seeing, by and large across the state, we've been very diligent in that. I mean, I salute our districts. Of course, we're a local control state, and that means that they have to work with their locally elected school boards and provide that. And again, it will vary from district to district. You're right. I mean, I've been on record. I think, the best way to learn is face-to-face instruction with that. But I would say that I think if you're looking at and listening at some of the recent information, information has been provided. Georgia, by and large, is outperforming. We are ahead of the curve when it comes to face-to-face instruction versus states. I mean, to be honest, and I say this with all sincerity, I'm glad I'm the state school superintendent of Georgia. When I talk to my counterparts, like I said, there's a big problem across that. But I appreciate Governor Kemp in allowing us to be open, allowing us to give that option for our families and to our teachers and districts to have that face-to-face option. So, it's something that is not unique to Georgia. I think that as you look at, some states, when they started, and to my knowledge, have continued with nothing but virtual option. But for us, we are seeing that we are there, and like I said, I think for us, even sharing before I came over, I was sharing with an individual from Washington, D.C. They were getting an update on that, and they had nothing but good things to say about Georgia because they have heard of the job we're doing. And again, I want to say that it's not something that I've done, but our local districts in following the guidelines and mitigations have done a great job. And where we are, falling short, we want to make sure we continue to improve it as we go along.
Senator Sims.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I had several questions, but I want to go back to the screen that showed the map of when we started, the colors. Okay, so now, when we began, we were blue, mostly. And it says we were offering 5 days a week in person.
Yes.
And now there's more of a purplish color being displayed where we are delayed in-person reopening.
Yes.
Okay. Give me, because now it sounds as if currently where we are, students are, when you said delayed in-person reopening, are we going virtual? What are we doing? Because I'm a little confused here.
Okay.
We know that education leans heavily towards local control.
Yes.
In the state of Georgia. So I want to also emphasize what Senator Dolezal just said about some schools having 3 days of school only. Children are losing seat time, instructional time. How do we plan to make up that seat time or that instructional time that is being lost by our students? Because what I'm seeing now is a big difference from the beginning of the school year and where we are currently. So what are we going to do to make that up?
Well, I think when you look at the second map on the right, what took place during that time was that we had our Thanksgiving and Christmas break. And so across, as many of you know, we did have a spike throughout the state in which we saw a rise of COVID incidents. A lot of times when you look at this, that this is not necessarily a sole decision that we make, but we do work with our departments of health on that issue. And based on their guidance, it could have been that we did maybe perhaps have teachers in quarantine. And that's one of the things we look at. It's not necessarily that we've had a lot of COVID outbreak, even though we have some, but a lot of it has been based on our ability to staff our schools. And that was because of the COVID outbreak or spike that as we experienced right after the first of the year. Now this map, again, is several days old. What we did find is that a lot of schools, again, who had been virtual, were looking at coming back face to face. And again, that was several of the metro areas. This is a temporary look at what we're at, you should see that we go back to largely blue across the state. As you mentioned, where do we have to make this up? And this is time. I mean, we are losing time. And so how do we make that up? And again, as I shared with within the presentation, expanding the school day, prioritizing our curriculum, looking at what we're going to do during the summer to bring our students back. I think for some students that definitely have suffered this loss, that it's going to be imperative that they come to school during the summer. And that's one of the things we're looking at with the CARES funding to help increase that availability. I think that with that, what you'll find out is that hopefully the vaccines will be rolling out, but also we'll be able to have mitigations in which a smaller reduction of students in person, because of the fewer numbers of kids that are there, you can social distance more effectively. So, we're going to continue to look at that. We're looking at, working with the governor's office of expanding our opportunities, but we're just going to have to look at time. And at the beginning of the school year for next year, it may look a little bit different because we have to perhaps think about what are the subjects, what is the content that will allow these kids to be successful as they continue to move on. So our instruction of what we teach may be highly prioritized in some areas for certain kids. Not all, because again, the vast majority of our kids, as we look at this on the map that have been face to face, hopefully we'll have a good, strong rest of the year.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Woods, a number of first responders across our state have been vaccinated. Do you support or have an opinion on teachers being vaccinated across the state, or you're a proponent of local control or local option?
Well, I think that, as we look at anyone, I think the goal was hopefully to say that everyone is vaccinated. I think as I look at, where we were a year ago, we were talking about a vaccine that may be 3 to 5 years out. But, I think for myself, a miracle of the Lord, we're now talking about vaccines. Definitely, I think having teachers vaccinated is a necessity, giving them, our teachers that option. Definitely is a priority. I've looked at, where we are. I'm very thankful that we are on the high end and looking at the next round. Unfortunately, what we face throughout the state and throughout the nation is just a shortage because, that's, just the numbers that we're looking at. That how do you make sure that everyone's getting the vaccine? To my knowledge, across the state, we're using, the vaccine that requires 2 inoculations. And so that's something you have to plan for as well. As I've shared, I think that for the rest of the school year, I don't know that I anticipate a lot of shift and change, and especially if it's that vaccine that we're looking at using, because it still takes a month or a month and a half or whatever before you get the second inoculation. And then even after that, again, for a report that I heard yesterday, it takes several days or weeks afterwards to be fully, where you can sustain and not have to worry. And those are just numbers that now we're looking at beginning February. And so you're talking perhaps if we got it today, we're looking probably April that we could say that we would have that vaccine. So we still have to follow our mitigations, do what we are doing. But yeah, definitely I support vaccines for our teachers. They're valuable people, but I don't want to discriminate. To me, the cashier in Walmart's just as important as anyone else's out there. And like I said, I think that those are making decisions. They're making great decisions based on the information and science that we have available. But thankfully, we are talking about we have a vaccine, which a year ago that looked like a dream.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, Senator Harper had her hand up before me.
I'm sorry?
Senator Harper had her hand up before me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question about faculty and teachers, because I know that in some districts anyway, that there's been a reduction in the number of teachers that we have. Part of that might be budget driven, part of that might be about their own fears of returning to the classrooms. And my question really is, do you have a sense of the number, like the percentage, the overall impact that has had in the state in terms of the numbers of our faculty? And do we have any plans to mitigate that impact and what that means for students in the classroom, whether that's larger class sizes, especially kind of as we come out of this and into next year, where we're already understanding that we're going to be dealing with that learning loss? How do we not make that just be an ongoing kind of snowball effect?
Again, I think to say the full effect, we won't know till the end of the year. Because your teachers begin, we are under contract, and so if we see a drastic loss, I can give you firm numbers on that. Teacher recruitment and retention is not something that has been something new for us at the course of the year. I think working with the governor, and again, of course, is Teacher First, the legislation he's looking at. How do we pull in other individuals, whether it's prior teachers, individuals that are business and industry, and open up that pathway. So I think making access to the instruction or becoming a teacher is extremely vital and important. One of the things I would say our local districts, and again, many of them, do is that they before they even open up the doors, they begin to have conversations with their teachers to make them feel comfortable, to make changes as they've gone through the year. Again, just trying to look at some things that we hope. I think having that $1,000 support, bonus for our teachers, and not only them. I mean, it's hard to find a bus driver. It's hard to find cafeteria workers. So we can't lose those individuals as well. And so I think trying to prioritize and say financially is something we can do to help out to support that. Providing, I think, as the chairman mentioned, mental health support for our staff members will be very critical as well. So I think we're looking at it from a very comprehensive approach. I don't think one size fits all, but trying to listen to our districts, and we continue to listen to the district. What are your needs? And I think we'll see that varies from school to school. As I traveled about, I had teachers that, by and large, when I've spoken to them, they were saying, I am so glad I'm with my kids. They miss their kids. And I think, and I'll be honest, I think a story I shared the other day, I was down in Berrien County. They had 2 teachers that were quarantined. But yet, because of their dedication, they were teaching their class, who was face-to-face or in school, online at home. That's the dedication of the staff that we have. So they're going above and beyond that, and I think those are some things that we look at. I think that in some areas, some of the schools that I visited, they've tried to reduce the prep time. As I've shared, they've had teachers who have been dedicated just to virtual, or teachers that are dedicated just to face-to-face. So it is a combination of us working with the local districts to make sure. I think it's very comprehensive. Some of the new legislation that's coming up and being proposed will help as well. But at the end of the school year, when we know when contract time runs up, I can give you definitely some strong numbers on that.
Thank you.
Senator Anavartari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Halpern asked my question, but I want to make a statement, just I think go a little bit further than where Senator Halpern was going. I think before COVID, recruiting teachers has been a challenge, just like bus drivers. I think that accelerated coming into this school year. Quite frankly, I don't think the data is going to be that much different next year than it is this year, and we're losing teachers. I just feel like we need to have state strategies. We sit here and we'll talk about, we need more welders, we need more machinists, we need everything else. But we need to get to a place where we have true teacher workforce strategies, I think, in terms of this crisis, but what is sustainable. Like, I get the $1,000 the governor wants to give. I support it. But long-term, what are we going to do? Because for that $1,000, the teacher still has to pay taxes on it. And once the taxes are taken out, what's after that? And my wife, she's a parapro in a special needs classroom. So the senator who asked the question about, what are we doing for special needs families during this time? I think just holistically, it's easier for me to sit here and say more has to be done. But I think we got to get strategic, or we're going to lose a generation of teachers and teachers who do not want to come into this workforce because of the challenges they're seeing their friends exhibit right now. So my challenge, and and I know you're doing everything you can, and you get to sit here and sometimes to take the heat like my superintendent used to do locally. But I think we got to get further in challenging ourselves to how are we going to really solve this problem and make it sustainable so we don't see increases in poverty and everything else in our state. So I think the workforce challenge it's going to grow bigger. It's bigger than what I think we really believe it is today.
Well, again, just to follow up with that, I would say we are working with higher ed. Higher ed is the one who trains our teachers. They train our workforce. And so they have been working very diligently to recruit new individuals. Across the state, what you'll find out is that there are many school districts that are looking at growing their own. And I think that's very intentional about that. I think with the new legislation that's coming up, and we've been talking about this, being able to draw from experience that's out there. We have a lot of retired teachers. We have a lot of people that perhaps are in the military, and it's trying to look at easing access to great individuals that can fill that void. And we're not talking about teachers, in mass, but in specific areas. I mean, special needs, that's a high need area. Math science is a high need area. And so some areas we look at, what does that look like? And I think they're trying to, remove some of the bureaucracy, which we have been doing intentionally. And I want to assure you, we're talking about leadership. One of the things that is very, needs to be comprehensive, we've been working with our local leaders as well, is that your leadership at the school level really can play a big part in being successful. I think that, if you're creating an environment that encourages individuals to come in. For myself as a former teacher and administrator, I encouraged our best of the best. Have you ever thought about becoming a teacher? I think for myself, growing up, I had teachers who allowed me to teach the class to my peers. And so I think giving that experience is very, very thorough. I think that as we look at the accountability system, I think, we look at teacher recruitment, but I'm thinking to look at teacher retention. By year 5, we lose 1 out of 2. Well, if we can just cut that number in half, we significantly put a dent in the teacher role. And I think with the accountability system, when we look at teacher mentors, that's something we need to look at. And that is, again, part of our plan, that for those experienced teachers, let them become that support for those teachers that are first, second, third, fourth year in there. Because teaching, like I said, I remember going in the first day I thought I was going to save the world. After that first day, I was looking for somebody to save me, okay? Reality kind of hit that. And I think, working with our higher ed, which we've been talking, give those teachers a longer experience. Give them the instruction that is meaningful, not something that is like you put a check and just seeing it, this is the way we always done it. And I think we can improve that on the higher ed end as well. So you're correct. It has to be very comprehensive. It has to be intentional. We are working on that, and I feel that we're, prior to COVID, we were seeing some good changes.
All right, we have one more question. We'll take one more question. Senator Parent.
Thank you. And thank you so much for everything that you are doing in your team. We know how hard all of you have worked over the course of the last year under these unprecedented circumstances. First of all, this is just a comment. I'm in much agreement with Senator Anna Vitarte. Another thing that I've often read about is that American teaching schools in general don't get very high marks. They're not considered to be particularly rigorous. And since Senator brought it up, I'll just make this comment before I get to my question, and this is probably, we could probably spend a whole meeting on this. I think that some of people wanting to go into teaching and stay there, the culture of society has to reflect the importance that we say that teachers have, and we just haven't lived up to that. Yeah. The way it started is all these single women will be teachers, right? And then that changed as the decades went on because there are more employment opportunities for women. That's just one reason. Yes. You can't say, oh, we value teaching so much, but frankly, the compensation doesn't look at it, doesn't reflect that. Yeah. And in our materialistic and capitalistic driven society, that says something. So that's just me on my soapbox. But the question I have is, we know that broadband has been a challenge, obviously, in our state for years, and many senators have worked hard on that issue. We haven't made near the progress we need to. I noticed that in your documents, you obviously reflect that it was put into such sharp relief when we had to go virtual, right? What you say affordable or some in the reimagine. access for all families. What does is there more detail in other documents about are you making recommendations to us or is there more detail?
Well, I think, as we look, our IT department is looking at, making some recommendations in the days to come. When you're looking at, of course, funding is something we look at. I think for now, we talked about, being able to have the broadband for us to expand those opportunities to our kids. At school, I think we've been able to, expand that for the next 5 years. I think we're at 100 megs or gigs, and then we're at 200. So I think sustainability, because that's one thing we have to look at is sustainability. Throughout the state, we probably are in pretty good shape when it comes to devices. A lot of our schools, when I go into, it's like, well, we're 1-to-1. We have that, but it's just a connectivity issue that's there. We are going to have to work with our broadband, suppliers. What does that mean? Does that mean more towers? Does that mean more access? I think we are working and have been talking with EMCs and a lot of people like Georgia Power to put that on the pole. And how do you physically do that? But it has to be at a way in which it is financially, affordable to our families as well. Talking with people such as AT&T, Verizon, we have looked at having packages that do that. We've been able to map out, and again, I don't have the slide with me today, but we were able to map out, where our dead spots or broadband deserts are. So we've been able to trace that pretty good. I can get a couple of individuals, I think Dr. Caitlin Dooley, Dr. Keith Osborne, and Chris Shealy, maybe to speak with you with some further things. But yes, we are working with that. I know the governor has presented a plan to work with that. Part of this is not only education, but it is also looking at this issue as being economic development for
Yes,
the district. So
totally agree.
So it is very comprehensive look at. I think we can continue to work with higher ed, and some of the resources that are there that we've been trying to have some conversations with expanding opportunities on that end. With the information, is there more information behind the curtain? Yes, there is. I would just have to, get with my staff and kind of provide some of that. But it's an ongoing discussion, and it does require perhaps potential funding somewhere.
Yeah, well, I believe that, I may be wrong about this, but this budget of the governor's may be the first time that we were sort of acknowledging this has to be public-private. We have to put in taxpayer money in order to get it out. So just welcome the dialogue.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll try to get some further information for you that might help let you be more.
I would love to see that, Mr. Superintendent.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming out. I know that, and thank you to all the teachers and administrators across our state, because I know that we're on a lot of bright spots in 2020. But if one thing that we can all look back at 2020 and realize that if you had told me that the world could be, that our country and our people and our state could really come back just in a collaborative effort, the way we have, where nobody was looking for credit, everybody was just looking to get it done, whether it was the local level or the city level or state level, everybody's just been working together to benefit everybody across, as far as I can see, across the state. And so I thank you to you, and thank you to teachers, and thank you to everyone in our education, because I know it's been a tough year, and I know we're not through it, but at the same time, we will get through it if we all stay focused on having a collaborative effort to make sure that we do everything we can.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, to each of the members. Again, thank you. If we can be of any service, please let us know. Our door is always open, and we can definitely want to provide you with information. But again, I want to just conclude by saying Georgia is in a good shape. When you look at us and compare to the other states, as I shared before, I'm so thankful I'm the state school superintendent of Georgia, because there are 49 other people that, when I talk to them, things aren't always on the smiley side with that. So, but thank you for your support. We look forward to working with you in the days ahead.
Well, thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you.
And if there's no other business for this committee, so I will just go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and we will be back hopefully next week. Thank you.